Let's now move on to another global story that WION has been closely tracking. We have yet another military takeover in Africa. Soldiers have now seized power in Burkina Faso. The takeover follows a mutiny attempt over the civilian president's failure to contain what was perceived to be an Islamist insurgency. Burkina Faso's army has ousted the president, Roch Kabore. They have suspended the constitution, dissolved the government and the National Assembly, and have announced the closure of the country's borders. The announcement was made on state television. The statement added that the announcement said that the takeover had been carried out without any violence and that those detained were at a secure location. The announcement cited the deterioration of the security situation. It also accused the president of failing to unite the West African nation. The statement was made in the name of a previously unheard-of entity, that is the Patriotic Movement for Safeguard and Restoration, or MPSR. It said that this movement would re-establish the constitutional order within a reasonable time.
Qui menace les fondements même de notre nation, de l'incapacité manifeste du pouvoir de M. Roch Marc Christian Kabore à unir les Burkinabés pour faire face efficacement à la situation et suite à l'exaspération des différentes couches sociales de la nation, le mouvement patriotique pour la sauvegarde et la restauration MPSR a décidé d'assumer ses responsabilités devant l'histoire, la communauté nationale et internationale.
The army broadcast came after 2 days of confusion and fear in the capital of Ouagadougou. Shooting had erupted at the army camps in the capital. Soldiers were demanding more support for their fight against Islamist militants. A democratically elected president was then detained following a day of gun battles in the capital. The head of the United Nations has reacted with dismay to the third coup in West Africa in the last 18 months. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the takeover of the government by the force of arms. Guterres has now called on coup leaders to lay down their weapons. Meanwhile, hundreds of residents gathered in Ouagadougou to celebrate the takeover. The leader of the Save Burkina Faso movement spoke to the crowds. Listen in.
Dieu a exaucé le vœu. L'armée a répondu à l'appel du peuple. Le président Roch Marc Christian Kabore a été destitué. Les institutions ont été dissoutes. Le peuple est en train de fêter. C'est une liesse populaire. Et c'est ce que nous attendons. L'armée dans son ensemble a décidé en communauté de prendre la gestion de la nation en main. Aux côtés du peuple qui souffrait depuis 7 ans.
On est vraiment dépassé de la situation. On était tellement coincés qu'on ne savait plus quoi faire. Tout est bloqué. Le commerce, même l'administration, tout est bloqué. On ne se comprenait plus. Et c'est pourquoi je suis content et j'espère qu'au moins nous serons soulagés.
Landlocked Burkina Faso is one of West Africa's poorest countries despite being a gold producer. The country has experienced numerous coups since independence from France in the year 1960. Army takeovers have toppled governments over the past 18 months in Mali and Guinea. The military also took over in Chad last year after President Idriss Déby died fighting rebels on the battlefield. Now, for more details on this recent coup, we are now joined by Richard Ashton, the West Africa correspondent for the Times of London, who joins us now from Lagos in Nigeria. Richard, welcome to WION World is One. Thanks for joining us. Now, we at WION have been tracking all the developments in Burkina Faso closely. More than a dozen mutinous soldiers declared on state television that the military junta had now seized control of Burkina Faso after detaining the president. They say that no force or violence was used. The borders have been shut down. This followed a day of gun battles. What's happening on ground as of now? Who controls the country?
Well, there has been, as you suggest, a degree of confusion. We still don't know where the, do we call him the president or the former president, Roch Kabore, is. There have been conflicting reports about that. International observers do seem to be saying that he is in safe hands and being kept by the military. But all we've heard of him since Sunday is a tweet yesterday afternoon in which he called for those who are taking up arms put down arms. So we've still yet to get confirmation where he is. Demonstrators, as we've heard, have been out in the streets today celebrating the apparent coup, but yet there still is tense and confused atmosphere in the city.
Right. Richard, tell us a little bit more about this leader of the military coup which overthrew the government. And a second part to that question, was this coup anticipated at all by authorities?
Yeah, that's a good question. So he is a younger general, officer, I should say, who was promoted in December. He's one of a number of younger officers in the Burkina Faso army to be promoted. He's a published author, we know. He's written a book about fighting jihadism in West Africa. And he himself has experience of fighting the Islamist insurgency in West Africa, unlike many of the older generals who were deposed and whose deposing the younger generals have called for. So one of their points, the coup plotters, is that the army needs to be run by people who have experience of fighting. Burkina Faso had a fragile stability up until the insurgency arrived in about 2015. So some of the younger soldiers have been on the front lines. The older ones haven't, and they believe that it's their turn to take over. Some analysts will tell you, however, that the problem is not the personnel. It's simply that the Burkina Faso army is woefully under-resourced, and this change to personnel is unlikely to make much difference.
Right, Richard, just wrapping up our discussion here, my final question for you. Burkina Faso happens to be one of the poorest nations in the region. With this recent spate of instability, what lies ahead for the nation?
Well, it remains to be seen. There are other countries will be looking on with interest. We've obviously seen a number of coups in just a few months. The fact that lots of people have been out in the streets today and the coup resulted from weeks and months of demonstrations suggests there is a degree of popular support for the coup, and also suggests that the junta will be unlikely to move quickly back towards democracy because they've got that public support. We've seen recently in Mali a case of coup plotters delaying elections that they had promised, and it wouldn't be totally surprising if we see in the coming weeks this iteration of the Burkina Faso leadership talking about stability rather than democracy.
Richard Ashton, thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on WION. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.